Hey everyone, Miss Cochran here to teach you a little lesson about text structure. Now I know this week you've been reading One Plastic Bag by Miranda Paul, and you've learned about the problems and solutions that Isa 2 came up with in her village. So today we're going to be talking just briefly about text structure. Now hopefully this little anchor chart looks familiar to you from what we've talked about in class. There are 4 different types of text structures that authors use to convey information to readers. So they may compare and contrast, they may use cause and effect, they may use sequence, or they may use problem and solution. So just very quickly, I'm going to talk about each one just as a little refresher. So when we talk about compare and contrast, the author is describing how things are alike and different. So maybe he's comparing turtles and tortoises, because sea turtles and tortoises are the same, but they're also different. So they might be going through and telling us things that they have in common and things that they have different. Then there's cause and effect, which is when the author explains what happened and why it happened. So the author might say, because it rained, the river flooded. So the cause was the rain, and the effect was the river flooding. Then we jump down into sequencing. So when we talk about sequencing, that's when you're ordering events in chronological order. So for example, if you wanted to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you're not going to say, spread the peanut butter on the bread. That can't be your first step. You didn't get your bread out, you didn't get your knife out, you didn't get your peanut butter out. So we have to think about how those steps work in order. Right? So first you get out your bread, then you get out your knife, then you get out your spoon, then you get out your jelly and your peanut butter, and then you take your peanut butter and you get the knife and you spread that peanut butter on that bread, and then you get your spoon and you scoop the jelly out and you spread that on your bread. So that's what we mean by sequencing, putting events in order. So today or tomorrow, maybe it's tomorrow your task is going to be with something special. I'm not going to give it away yet, even though you can look ahead to tomorrow. Your task is going to be putting events in order, so be very, very careful that you don't miss a step, because if I were to read your steps and do exactly what you wanted me to do, I'd want to make sure that I got it correct, right? So we have to be very careful when we're going through that. But today, we're going to focus on this one down here, problem and solution. So when we are looking at problem and solution, this is where the author states a problem, but they also explain how it's fixed. So when we have a problem in a story, something is just not working out, right? The character can't do something, the character can't go somewhere, the character can't fix something. Those are called problems or conflicts. There may be a problem with another character. There may be a problem with something that the character does. There may be a problem with something the character sees. So those things are problems. Really, really good stories have problems, but they also have to have a solution. The author's not just going to spit out a problem to you and not tell you how it's solved. So that's where a solution comes into play. And that solution piece is how the author solves that problem. Okay? Well, the author's going to write it, but the character's going to solve it. So when we're thinking about problem, we are thinking about the character is faced with something. Okay? So I want you to think about our story, One Plastic Bag. Is Isa 2 faced with some problems? Absolutely. Is she faced with more than one? Yeah. Can characters be faced with more than one problem? Of course. If a story is going to have one really big problem, but then they're going to have a bunch of little ones that lead up to that really big one. So Isa 2 faces a lot of problems. Okay? Now, the really important thing is how Isa 2 solves those problems. So she's given these situations, and does she just go, nothing I can do about this today? Or does she go, you know what? I need to figure this out. I need to solve this problem. And I'm pretty sure we all know the answer to that, but I'm not going to give it away. So it's very important when we're thinking about the solution. That speaks a lot to the character and what the character finds important. Because there may be some characters that see that same problem that Isa 2's facing and go, I don't know how to solve this. I'm just not going to. And that speaks a lot to what they find important. And then we have to think about Isatu, and she's faced with this same problem, but she does something about it. So with your activity today, you're going to be looking in your MyPal on pages 124 and 125. Now, when you are looking in your MyPal today, and when you are looking at your Story One plastic bag, you are zoning in on these two pages, 124 and 125. The rest of the story, I want you to forget it. Because Isatu faces a lot of problems in this story. And if I tell you, what's the problem in the story? You may come up with 5 different problems, and they may all be right. But the focus for today is just looking on these two pages, 124 and 125. Isatu comes across a problem, and she also solves it, just on these pages. So this is what I want you to do today. In your My Book, on pages 124 and 125, I want you to read it. Just read it first. 2 pages, just read it. Then I want you to ask yourself when you're done reading, was there a problem? Did something happen? And did she solve it? And then, with a highlighter or a pencil, I want you to go back in your story and I want you to underline the problem. Find it in your book. Find that evidence, that problem, and I want you to underline it or I want you to highlight it. And then I want you to go into your My Notes section, which is that white margin along the side of your MyPal. And I want you to write a sentence telling me what the solution was. And I want you to write a complete sentence. I want you to say, Isatu's solution or the solution was, but just on these 2 pages. You're zoning in, you're looking right at them, and you're figuring out what is the problem and what is the solution. What does Isatu have a problem with? How does she solve it? I promise you, there is a problem and a solution on these 2 pages. Now, it's not going to come out flashing at you going, problem, 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 problem. It's not going to do that. You're going to have to read really carefully and figure out what's just not going well for Isatu. And then you're going to have to read a little bit more carefully and figure out how does she solve it. So, I have faith in you. Just looking at these 2 pages, remembering that that problem is that conflict, that issue, and that solution is how they fix it, how they make it better. Okay? So I hope you've enjoyed your Story One Plastic Bag by Miranda Paul this week, and I hope that you're able to find the problem and solution on these 2 pages, just these 2 pages. So, happy reading.